We need to talk about some of these mock drafts because some of them I absolutely love, and some of these ones I absolutely hate. Because again, I am telling you this that the Blues need a defenseman. I'm going to talk more about this coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode of Locked On Blues, I will be talking about some mock drafts that I've been seeing and again emphasizing the importance of getting a defenseman. Also, more free agents who also could the Blues pick up, and your most improved player of this past season, because I had a revelation about that. And I don't think it's going to be the player that you're expecting me to say. So we have a lot to discuss on Locked On Blues today. But first, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Hello, and a happy Wednesday to everybody watching Locked On Blues. I hope your Wednesday is going well halfway through the week, which means that we're getting closer and closer to that draft. Now, I know we've talked a lot about the draft, and I know it's going to be very draft heavy, and I understand, okay? I get it. At the end of the day, this is the importance of, what the Blues are going to be primarily focusing on. And I think it's okay to really just talk about the draft in full because at the end of the day, this is what's going to shape the team for years to come is our draft picks. And, in yesterday's episode, I talked a lot about the guys that we've drafted in the past, and we can really see how much of an impact they've made on the team. Kyrou, Thomas, Hofer. So needless to say, the list goes on and on. But I do want to also mention some different players, and this is from Bleedin' Blue. So BLEEDIN, little mark, and then blue, because they had a mock draft that came out. And I thought this was a really interesting thing because for their mock draft, they focused on the second round too. And I know that's something that we have to get into. And, it's interesting, but they do have Igor Shenishov, who's a left winger, as our first round pick. And listen, it's not that he isn't a good player. I know KHL. I get all that. I just really expected the Blues to maybe go after a guy that's a defenseman. Now, in the second round, which was interesting, they had a Will Scan, Boston College. And the thing about Will, which is interesting about this, is that, he is 6'4", 212 pounds, 17 years old. And he doesn't put up a lot of points, right? But they always say that, it's okay to have depth, and he is a good depth player that will bring you a lot on the blue line. And the reason why I mentioned this is because I thought that was interesting because you do have to fall quite a bit. And I'm not against getting a defenseman in the second round, but would I prefer to have him in the first round? Well, not him, but a defenseman, absolutely. But this was another scenario from Bleeding Blue that just kind of got me thinking, and I'm like, okay, this could make sense, and I like that a lot. So something that also I just wanted to mention too is that I think every single person who's doing mock drafts, you are killing it. It is not easy to take all these draft picks and match them up with the teams. I mean, in the first round, especially the first 16. So I respect everyone's work. Now, this is from the Hockey Writers. Oh, this is from Mike. Oh, Mike Mayer. I love following. I always mess up his name. Mayer. Anyways, I'm sorry, Mike. Mike did have somebody, Luke Missa, who is a center and 5'10", 165 pounds, and he is on the smaller side of prospects. ever, okay? In the WHL, he had 18 goals and 57 points through his first 43 games of the regular season. He has a lot of speed, which Mike talks about, and that is something that's promising. And again, I have mentioned this time and time again, how the Blues really need to improve that third line, especially. And it's something to really hate on Kevin Hayes about, because at the end of the day, that third line, it is what it is. But I do like seeing that potentially in the future, the Blues could have a solidified good third or fourth liner, because I don't expect him to come up this season or next season. But in the future, if they do get him a couple of years from now, it's nice to know that you have that security. Now, another name about a guy that's left forward is Cole Iserman, who's a left winger. So it is funny because everyone thought that he was going to kind of go overall kind of fast. And it's always a possibility. But listen, he's good. He's a solid player. And he potentially could fall out of the top 10. And Mike put it interesting. He could be completely 10 to the 15th overall. And I think that's why it's really important for the Blues to keep an open mind. Obviously, if there's a player with a better talent that's not a defenseman that the Blues could pick up, choose him. No doubt about it. I am not telling Doug Armstrong just choose a defenseman just to choose one. But if there's a better player that can give you more out of their draft pick, then you got to do that. Because right now, the Blues only have the 16th overall pick. They don't have any other picks in the first round. So you need to be careful with who you're going to draft. And you need to think about it in multiple ways. Do you need a player now? Because most of these guys, I hate to say it, they're not going to be NHL ready this coming season. They're not. Maybe a couple seasons, but this draft class isn't the same as the last year's draft class. And I want you to understand that. Last year's draft class was something special. You had ready players, right? For the NHL. You had NHL ready players last draft class. This draft class, not so much. You need that time to develop. You need that time to truly work on the game. And that's why I am saying this right now. Whoever the Blues draft in this year's draft is not going to fix the team next season. They still need to make those moves during free agency, work on some trades, and do something, because the Blues have a lot of work to do this offseason. And the draft is all great. It's all fine and dandy, but it's not for this upcoming season. Okay. It is for the future. So once you get that notion out of your head that, oh, this draft could really help the Blues be a stronger team next season. No, it's not, because none of these guys, for the most part, will be ready to play an NHL game this coming season, maybe an AHL game. But I just wanted to put that disclaimer out because I'm seeing so many people say things, and it's not anyone's fault. I think last year the draft class was just so unique and so special, and they were just really, really good. And this year, it's not to say that these players aren't as talented, they don't have the skill set that they need, but it's a lot different than last year's draft class. And it would be wrong for me to come on here and say, oh, yeah, this is going to help the team next season, when it's not. It may not even help the team the following season. So you got to think ahead, and you have to truly think to what the Blues can do for the upcoming future, a little bit more long term, and then short term, what they're going to do this summer during free agency. I know it's a lot. And I understand, it's a difficult situation because you're so excited about the future. But at the end of the day, you just have to be smart about it. And I think that's something that I've been trying to do a good job with, is just being really smart about, who the Blues should get. So finally, I just want to say this. The hockey writers, is this the hockey writers? Yeah, and this is Anthony Testaguza. He also had some more about, who the Blues could take at 16. And I mentioned all these other names, except I didn't mention Henry Muse. So Henry Muse is projected right now to go late in the first or early in the second rounds. But he is a right-handed defenseman. And honestly, Muse, I want to say Hughes. It's not, Muse is a really good player. He played 65 games in the OHL, the Ontario Hockey League, and he finished with 61 points, 15 goals, and 46 assists. He's 6'1", 181 pounds, but he is not a physical guy when it comes to getting that puck, so definitely needs to work on that. During the 2024 U18 World Junior Championship, Muse showed his offensive talent at the blue line with Team Canada and scored 7 points in 7 games, which helped them win the gold. So, a player that Muse honestly could play well with, and this is what, again, Anthony said, would be to pair him up. Well, not like pair him up, because obviously we don't know who he's going to be paired up with. I could see him being paired up. I'm not going to say Parayko because that's a little disrespectful. Maybe a Krug. But he could also help guys like a Buchnevich a lot too. And he could help with the Thomas, Kyrou. Just he's going to help with the team, especially that first line. So maybe pair him up with Parayko, actually, come to think of it. But again, too early to tell, right? They didn't even draft the kid yet. So that is about some of the mock drafts that I've seen. I like them a lot until all of you writers. I'm a writer myself for a different hockey team. I think you're doing fantastic work, and I just want to give you a lot of credit for just doing the work that you do because it does go noticed. And again, it's not easy to do this. So thank you for all of those that have made mock drafts. Time to talk to you about my friends over at Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with financial safety net during today even. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for a $1 million coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to talk you through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step, okay? So check life insurance off your to-do list with no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Let's talk some more free agency because I had a grand old time talking about free agency yesterday because once I mentioned Pat Maroon, I think you could tell I was just like so mesmerized by the idea of having him back on the Blues that I lost my focus with everything else. And I just kind of got a little bit too carried away. But here's the thing. We need to talk about some of these top free agents because for me, it gets me a little bit excited. So obviously I did mention Sam Reinhart. Oh my goodness. Could you imagine him on the Blues? Like, this is the thing. He is such a good winger. And I think honestly that, he has just been probably on my list of this is who I want. Do I think they're going to get him? Probably not. His price might be a little too hefty. But could you imagine him up on that first line playing with Thomas? That would be something special. But I don't know if the Blues are going to get him, obviously. But I mean, is it so bad a girl wants to hope? I mean, last year his salary cap hit was at 6.5 mil. So as I said, he's expensive. But again, anything is possible and he's younger. So I'm like, okay. Now I did mention Brandon Montour of the Vegas Golden Knights. Okay. Literally defender, 30 years old, but he has 3.5 milli. And here's the thing. He has spent years, right, besides finding his fit. Did I say Vegas? I'm in Florida with Florida. And, he has that Stanley Cup. I mean, he didn't win the cup, obviously, with Florida last year, but he, your boy made it to there. So I guess he knows what it's like. When it comes to defense, I would take any of them. Listen, if you're on the Florida Panthers and you want to play for the St. Louis Blues, we want you. Come, because watching them is so much fun despite their loss last night. So I would take any single Panther. mostly every single Panther, especially you, Vladdy. Mr. Tarasenko, come back. No, but like I would really take Vladimir back with us. I use his full government name. I didn't even say Vladdy. I was like, okay, Vladimir, you can come back to being with the Blues. Okay, Vladimir? I find myself funny sometimes. Vladimir, come back. Now, this is what I was thinking of. Jonathan Marchessault. So he is honestly a winger. He could be on the right wing or left wing with the Vegas Golden Knights. His 2023-2024 salary cap hit was at $5 million. And here is the thing with him. He's old. He's 33, which is only 7 years older than me. So I'm like, okay, like cool, hail. No, but he's definitely a little bit older, but yet he is such a solid player. He's a big leader, right? And a big guy in the dressing room. He is a strong player, an aggressive player. And I think that he would honestly be very helpful. And here's the thing. He won the Stanley Cup and he wants it back. And you can tell that about him. So, yeah, I feel like he is the kind of player that you would want on your team. He is that kind of guy that if you were to win the cup, you would say, oh, yeah, he contributed a big part besides his skills on the ice, because that's huge. Off the ice, too, you would look at him and say, okay, yep, he has helped in the locker room. And I know that's what a captain should do, but sometimes you need those other guys that can come in and spice things up a little bit. And I feel like that's what Marchessault could do. Also, I just think that he is a fantastic player, and skill set aside, I mean, he's good at scoring goals. He's good at playmaking. He's good on the power play, good on the PK. Like, why don't we consider him? Because it's expensive. Okay, valid. That's when you look at a guy like Montour and you say, okay, I know you're a defender, 3.5 million, but it's better than 5 million. Even though I know it's different positions, I just want one player this free agency that has been to the Stanley Cup or has won the cup in the past couple of seasons. So, yeah, am I looking at teams like Florida and Vegas most recently? Obviously. Obviously. The Avalanche are kind of falling apart, so I'm not looking at them as much. I mean, the Stars have some really good players too, but they're still playing. And I know the Panthers are, but I want to see how those guys pan out, because I don't know if any players from the Stars that will be free agents will be good enough to be on the Blues in a sense. Not in a mean way, just they have a good dynamic. I just feel like there's a lot of free agents right now coming out of Florida, which I want to take full advantage of. So that is about a couple more free agents. I'll talk more every day about some guys that I like, but definitely wanted to mention them. Time to talk about my friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I told you at the beginning of the episode, the player I had for most improved, you wouldn't guess. And you're probably still like, Hale, is it Hofer? No. Hale, is it Neighbors? No. Hale, is it who I think it is? No, because my most improved has to go with the player that I thought really did improve throughout the season, a player that I thought had a good season, and a player that I think got unnecessary hate. Yep, it is Jordan Kyrou. I think he is the most improved this season, not skill-wise, but mentality-wise, if that makes sense. And let me explain why. Kyrou had a tough season, okay? He really did. After some of the things that he said about Berube, I mean, I was upset about it. I'm not going to lie and act like I wasn't, because I was. I have the episodes on file, so I don't want to get called out for not being authentic. I was upset. I think the grace and the way that he's handled himself showed to me that he is a more mature guy than I gave him credit for being. He was able to take accountability. He was able to go on the ice and really show how much he loves playing for us. I mean, this man shed tears over the fact that he thought people in St. Louis hated him. He loves playing here. He loves being a Blue. And I think that if you want to go and say, oh, well, who was the most improved skill wise? Yeah, you could say a Joel Hofer. You could say, a Jake Neighbors, even, right? You could say Robert Thomas, like so many different guys. But when I'm talking most improved, I'm talking about a player that maybe just didn't have the best start to the season. Maybe I don't want to say behavioral issues because I don't think it was that, but a player that was able to rise and shine. And I really do believe that Kyrou did make up for all of it. I mean, sure, you can say, hey, it's a little, ridiculous to even say, oh, well, I'm going to give somebody credit for just handling a situation the way that they should have all along. But it takes guts, man, to go out, and especially in front of the media, and say, I love playing here. I hate that I said anything that would upset this fan base. Continue to have a good season. I mean, how many goals this season were like, yeah, Rosie? Like, there were so many moments this season where Jordan Kyrou stepped up on the ice as well. And just seeing how good he's played. I mean, he got a hat trick this season. So I do believe that he did endure a lot of hate unnecessarily. And I just want to play you a clip because I did interview him when he came to my city that I live in, and I had credentials. And I know that the Blues obviously are not in the playoffs and they didn't make it, but just look how he handled himself during this interview and tell me that this isn't a mature player. And here it goes. So this season, I would say this is a pretty good season for you. How do you feel like it's going thus far with, heading towards the end?
I mean, I think we're in a pretty good spot right now. These are exciting times. Right there in the playoff race, right? We're a couple points out, so we got a couple big games ahead of us here.
You have a big, trip up in the East. You have Philadelphia, then you head out, to New Jersey, New York. What do you think about these games as they're really crucial as you're still fighting for that wild card spot?
Yeah, just like I said, these are big games, right? So they're exciting games to play in. We got something to play for right now, so we're all pretty pumped up.
So that is a player that just exemplifies maturity, a player that shows me at the end of the day, after all that he's been through, he's able to hold himself with poise. And I think even too, when I even said on that interview, when I said, you had a good season, I would say, because I did mean it. I wasn't just saying it because if I didn't think he had a good season, I wouldn't say, oh, well, you had a good season. No, that was the truth. And I think the way that he handled himself, you saw how passionate he was about wanting to go to the playoffs. And that was his focus. He was the only player truly that I interviewed that day. I think I interviewed 8 guys that just was so focused on the playoffs and told me, I'm just so focused on the playoffs. When you interview me, let's just talk about the playoffs. Let's just talk about how we can get there. And I think that just goes to show that Jordan Kyrou is one of those players that has been the most improved. So he has grown up, and I am so happy for him on that aspect. Today was a fun episode. And guess what? We'll talk tomorrow for some more draft talk, some more free agency. And I had to finish up the grading, of course. So I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.